Welcome to Not Another Tooling podcast with my wonderful co-host, Mr. Matt Malcolm, on mile quite a lot on his treadmill.
I'm probably racking up, not all the time and not on purpose, anywhere between 7 and 10 miles a day at the moment. It's not trying to do that. It's just I'm preferring walking, standing, talking versus standing, talking now. So by default, it's like 7 to 10 miles each day now.
Nice. Does it feel weird when you're just standing and
Yeah,
talking?
yeah, that's why I used to put it away in the afternoon, but
Yeah.
I can't put it away now because when I'm standing talking for anything longer than half an hour, if I'm working, different. If I'm talking anything longer than half an hour, I'll get the treadmill back out. Like I feel compelled. It's weird. Also good because I'm not super pragmatic with my normal exercise. So this is filling a lazy gap as well. So I don't feel so bad if I don't get up in the morning for a bit of exercise. Yeah. Anyway,
Awesome.
slightly a tangent
Awesome.
there.
That's good. So today we wanted to talk about event management. Um, a topic that everybody deals with on a daily basis. If you've got 1 or 50 monitoring tools, you have a load of events, and they are often the bane of everybody's life. So, Matt, why don't you kick us off with event management? What's the point of all these crazy events? Why don't we
I
just
feel a bit offended. I was going to try and throw you that question there so I could like dodge the more formal answer. But I suppose in a nutshell, what is event management for me? It's turning potential noise, not always noise, there's some smart tools out there, but turning potential noise into the things that matter. And the things that matter might be consumed within that event management stuff. And you might look at it from a reporting or a dashboard perspective, but you are looking at the things that matter versus the noise. Or you might be forwarding it through its more traditional incident management activity. But that's like, if I was to draw a picture of how I perceive event management, it's line in the middle, lots of noise and scatty things on this side, and then the information I need on this side. That's how I deem it.
interesting. Okay. So I would say the biggest you've got all these kind of tools that could try and make some sense of the noise that you have of all these events that are coming out of it. But one thing I often find is a challenge is that people are trying to collect so much on the left hand side that it's really hard to get it into something manageable that means something. I mean, particularly you working with an organization that's been doing something like this for 20 years. Every time they've had an event or they've had an incident where they didn't pick up an event, even if it was once 18 years ago, they've suddenly decided that they need to pick up 15 metrics from that particular thing and add it in. And they're just adding more and more and more and more noise into the system. That therefore makes it really hard to do event management properly, I think, from my perspective. Don't know. Do you see the same thing?
All over, but then I suppose certainly over the last 5 years or so, and granted, neither you or I have probably been down in the weeds as much as we would have been in the actual event management activity. But over the last 5 years, and obviously more prevalent over the last couple of years, the introduction of AI, crappy word in this phrase, but the more automated logic and machine learning activity associated with event management, in theory, should be able to take care of a lot of that noise at the same time. Even if they do need to look at several other metrics, there should be some extra logic taking place, not in the monitoring tool, but in the event management activity, which also filters out and gives you the right answer. So I don't think it's terribly bad that people want to introduce more information. I mean, there's always that use case scenario about finding the right information, but let's pretend we're past that point. I think as long as there's a easy mechanism, and pinch of salt what the word easy means there, but an easy mechanism to turn whatever it is they've decided into something logical. I don't mind how much stuff is over here. Throw it all. If it's all could be relevant, let's understand. But I feel for the most of the time, the reason why in your scenario they might put 15 extra metrics in, because they don't know. They don't know which metric is relevant. we saw an issue happen here, but actually the trigger for it was in that log and that event, which happened 3 days ago. And every time we get this issue, 3 days prior at midday, we get that entry. So that's what we need to look at. But you don't know until you start throwing it all in. That's why we have a plethora of like log analytic tools and things like that, the obvious brands and stuff we can talk about. That's what they're used for, because they give you an opportunity to make sense of all of the noise, which the end result might only be this, but it's so hard to get to that answer. You know, you get your intelligent tools, which will give you that trace back and that sort of path of where the thing originated from. But from an event management point of view, you need all the noise to begin with to understand what the right answer is, I feel. One of the few scenarios where I feel more to begin with is a logical position to be
in. Interesting. Quite often, I'm in the position where I'm working with clients who are trying to modernize what they're doing in this space. And the hardest thing is that they've always thought that they need all of this stuff on a regular basis. And therefore, when they're looking to go forward, they try and do the same thing again.
Yeah.
But but often with even more stuff, because they're like, oh yeah, we need a modern tool so we can bring in Azure metrics and bring in some log analytics and all that stuff as well. And then so all of a sudden they've got all of this crazy stuff coming in. But when we go look at what goes wrong on a regular basis for them, actually, there's a lot of stuff that they collect that makes no bearing. And I think with a lot of these clever tools that you talk about here, there is a lot of them are paid or costed, licensed by the amount of data that you're throwing into them.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a piece of work, I think, to be able to say, to do event management well, you really need to understand what does go wrong in our environment and what do we need to collect and how often do we need to collect it, so that you can keep license costs down, but also so that you're not flooding your network and creating a monster of stuff, I think. But that sounds as if it's slightly different to your perspective. So
No. The end result of the activity I've been involved would be that full process of noise into more logical stuff. Because yes, you don't want to keep throwing large amounts of data at a lot of these platforms because it'll be costing through the roof. But you still need that bigger picture to understand, unless you've got really logical and smart technology in place in the first instance, which granted there are several tools out there, but not everybody has them. And if they haven't, they need that large proportion of information to understand, was it Tuesday? Was it Wednesday? Was it 3 p.m.? Was it the server? Was it the network? Was it the X, Y, Z? In order to then get down to the real information that is needed. It will be impossible for someone to determine, especially without adequate monitoring capabilities, to understand it was one of those things on one of those days at one of those times before they end up then with the smaller piece of information. But I think it's a mixture of intelligence at the different layers. But more traditionally, you know, back in the day, roll our sleeves up, do proper event management, show me the world and we'll see what's in there. It just so happens now we've got things that help us along the way. Either we're not going to give in so much of that stuff to begin with because it's going to be given to us in a already preconditioned, pre-filtered state with the right answer or close to, or we're going to have some logic in the middle, able to crunch it, able to work it out. But I suppose not to forget, at some point we send this stuff into our ticketing system, which, providing we're adequately configured in that space, we're also going to see more logic to that event or that incident at this point, because we're going to see it's attached to this CI, this impact, it's this service down, this service down. But it's all these different areas that I guess when we first started a while ago, we never had any logic at any of these points, not in an automated sense. Now we've got it, not everybody has it. So it's understanding where you can interject the areas of logic. So if they don't have a smart monitoring solution, you've got to start with a big portion of information. But granted, yes, you don't want to keep ingesting all that because, you know, a phrase that someone told me about one vendor and the salespeople of one vendor, they're like crack dealers. Because like once you have a little bit, you got to have more. I mean, I haven't had crack myself, so I can't fully relate. but I can see the analogy because you see a little bit and you need to know more. You want to know more. And I feel like that would be a logical starting exercise for a healthy event management activity. Didn't really think of it talking about crack on a Friday, but let's just go with it.
I've never done it either, but I can guess which vendor you mean. Yeah, yeah, I know that one. Okay, so changing tack slightly then. So in this, in your event management dashboard, on the right, you've taken all your stuff, you put it in this screen of things that make sense before you pump it into your ITSM tool. I've seen a real change. From 15 years ago, where you were looking at what's the uptime of my servers? Am I meeting my SLA again on my network that I promised the business? To actually what people want to see is health, availability, and risk of key business services in that kind of dashboard. Now, I'm talking about business services there versus event management, which could be construed as two different things, but
I think fair to consider it's along the same path. Well, I thought you might have been going there, like the back in the day view versus now. It's where that information and who it's for. So that same information, wherever this raw pile of noise is, that might be servicing the infrastructure team because they need to know uptime, runtime, capacity, blah, 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 whatever else. But then that same information, parts thereof, might be telling the sales team that sales are up, sales are down. The issue that's relating to the up or down sales might be related to the infrastructure, but it would depend upon the person who's consuming the content. Depends on the dashboard that's created. I mean, that's the biggest milestone change for over the last decade for us, is less of the dashboarding and technical view seems to be as important, and more of the outcome. What does it affect? It stops us transacting users for our platform, which results in this shopping carts, abandoned, all that kind of good stuff. So that the spin of the event management output seems to be more focused, and rightly so, really, because the money trail or whatever the metric is relevant. It seems to be more focused on the outcome of the issue versus the issue. That's probably a better way to explain it. Yeah. Back in the day, it was issue, big red lights. Here's the issue. Now there's the impact. And it could be a cost, it could be something, but that's a massive shift, I'd say. And with the introduction of smarter tools, technologies, integration, seem to be servicing models, all that kind of jazz, all of it really just narrows down to, well, what happens? So what? It answers the so what question, which is now a business view of it. But again, all relates from that event management proposition.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, and I think you've summed that up really nicely, of focusing on the outcome of the issue, not the issue itself. Is really important, and I still don't think many businesses are very good at that, right? Because they've done things, they're still trying to do things the way they've always done it, and it makes sense for them to do that. But I do think it's something that could really help businesses if they can get their head around it. Is there's a very little. I saw a Gartner stat recently, and I might be slightly misquoting this, but I think it was that.
I do get paid for Gartner, because I think you've mentioned it at least half of our sessions.
No, I just go to their stuff, and I know that most people listen to Gartner, right? I think it was that 23% of IT projects don't show value back to the business.
Oh, yeah.
And therefore, if you're switching to an outcome-based event management kind of approach, then you're able to understand what the impact is to the business of that service, that IT service that you're providing, and therefore prioritize things when things go wrong. Because I always used to use this example of when email goes down, everybody calls the help desk, right? And everybody's going mental because they can't do any work. But actually, they might be getting no calls because the sales, the website's gone down, but a million people are calling because email has gone down. So where do you go with that, right? And this outcome-based dashboard that you've talked about really focuses you on, hang on a minute, we're losing $1 million an hour. So we really need to go fix that, versus we've got 1,000 people calling in to say email doesn't work. So we need to go do that. So I think it really helps prioritize stuff.
But that's the tail end of the event management process, of course. Say we've got our technical issues, our email down, our whatever else, and we've got our sales activity, whatever the money generating thing, which is more important. That last step of it is actually making sure that the relevant thing is being made aware to the right people. So if we're getting to the point where we're now creating the right incidents, the incident that is going to be financial impacting to the business is clearly going to have a higher priority than it would do if it was a non-financial impacting. But then you get into the real deep depths of maturity within the ITSM platform, because in theory, we should know some of this information with a well-configured service management platform, predominantly in the CNDB and service portfolio space. But understanding that if that goes down every hour, minute, second, it costs this. If that goes down every week, it costs that. Don't worry about it. But the breadth of customers that mature, that end-to-end, the financial impact of the end-to-end, there aren't many of them out there. But of course, that's why we're in business, to engage with those kind of folks, right? And take them on those journeys, albeit seemingly sometimes a several-year maturity process.
Right. So what I was hearing you say there was that actually some of these new generation of tools allow us to really focus on what the outcome is, rather than the events themselves, which is definitely the way forward, I think. You've hit the nail on the head, and that's what good practice looks like, I think. Whether you're driving that, I know some ITSM tools are trying to drive similar outcomes, right? But it feels like more of a job in the event management space than the ITSM space. We're constantly having this discussion with people, and probably another topic for another time, of like ITSM tools are where your process lives.
Yeah.
And that's where your process workflow is. And you should be feeding great information into that. And this is a great way, I think, what we've talked about today, getting those events right and then providing great data into an ITSM tool so you can put the right priority on things and really understand what the business impact of those. Okay, so we talked about event management today. You had a really nice description of that, which was on the left-hand side, you had lots of noise. And then on the right-hand side, you have event management, which was so turning noise into things that matter. And things that you would want to see to be able to manage your IT services effectively, that you can then use to be able to effectively drive a great ITSM tool. And then we talked about focusing on the outcome of the issue, not the issue itself, and how tools have changed over the years. And a lot of people are still in that mindset of focusing on the issues. But actually technology has evolved really nicely these days, and you can focus on the outcome and what that means to the business, so that you can prioritize where you put your resource when you have a couple of outages at the same time. What does that outage actually mean to the business? Is there a financial impact to it? is it the 31st of the month and no one's going to get paid, and therefore everyone's going to take a week off work and not come in if they don't get paid, be able to put that great prioritization to it. And I think my takeaway was really looking at what the outcomes are you need, and shifting your mindset to an outcome-based mindset for event management versus an issue-based mindset, which is definitely doable, but it takes a mindset shift. The tools are out there to be able to do it, and a bit of a culture shift more than anything else. I think that sums it up. Have I missed anything, Matt?
Good summary, I think. Good summary. Yeah, outcomes.
Always. Instead of not another tooling podcast, somebody's going to tell us to rename this as the outcomes podcast. You always talk about outcomes because it's so crucial to getting tooling absolutely right. Wonderful. Thank you very much, my friend. That was useful, and I hope hopefully you've got another couple of miles in while we've been talking.
1.25, 3,000 steps. Just worth mentioning now to the people that might watch this is extra topics. We've still clearly got a long list of things we're going to discuss. That's still the intention, but getting some inputs from what people might want to discuss, because at some point as well, we'll also move into LinkedIn Live or some more interactive sessions. So we'd like to deliver those sessions with the audience, and then we can have a bit of a collaboration at the same time as discussing through, but one for the comments.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Wonderful. Thank you. See you on the next one.